listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything
could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I am AJ Walsh, and I'm glad to be here with you. And I'm glad that you can be here with us. We're live on CKLU 96.7 FM on the radio, also streaming at cklu.ca online. And you can just click on the Radio Player Canada app as you go to cklu.ca, and you can stream us. You can also download the same Radio Player Canada app, take us with you, and listen to us anywhere, anytime on your favorite device, along with all of the other programming that CKLU offers. CKLU, pretty much volunteer run. It is not for profit. It requires community support, whether it's through volunteerism or through making a donation. So feel free to head to the website, and if you are able to support CKLU and you have the means to be able to do that, please do so. We definitely count on your support in order to keep the airwaves on. And also, we're streaming at facebook.com/Sudbury News and youtube.com/Sudbury News. So we're grateful to be here. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow. Mainly, comment as we do our best to have a conversation here on this show about Sudbury-centric stories, along with other issues that face not only ourselves in this community or province in this country of Canada, but internationally as well. And we have a lot of people who join us from around the world, and we welcome you. And hopefully there's something on this show that you can find informational or educational or entertaining, just to name a few things. But anyways, we're glad to be here on this October the 10th, 2023. A lot of things taking place this weekend. First and foremost, front and center, the conflict in the Middle East, obviously. We should be able to have more on that coming up in the week. We know that it's not a good thing, and it can and will lead to other things that aren't good as well. And so I know that there's a lot of opinions on this, and so we want to be able to grab some independent journalists' work and put it together and be able to discuss what is happening there, how does it affect the people there, how can it affect, how can it have a broader reach, and how is it going to affect people around the world, basically. And so that coming in subsequent shows throughout the week. We've already planned to do our kind of themed climate change based shows on this week's roster. So we look forward to have a couple stories this morning that reflect that. So if you're interested in climate change, if you're interested in looking into it a little bit more than just hearing what maybe mainstream media is telling you about it, and you want to think more about it and have more information, then today's your show. If that subject indeed intrigues you, whatever side of it you're on, we try to get as many views on it as possible. However, we don't just have the mainstream view, because you get that already. So why would we spend time on the show just giving the mainstream view that everybody is given through a fire hose of information all the time, right? So we already know that. That's the common mainstream view. And so we like to have a little bit of a different perspective on the show, and helps us to, have a richer experience when you hear the other side of things, right? So let's dive right into some weather. Got a little bit of a sports update on the Wolves this weekend, how they did, what they're up to in the next few days. and we'll hop into some local headlines, things going on around Greater Sudbury, and then we'll dive right into our theme, our deeper theme of the week, right after this. So stay with us. And as usual, Sudbury Weather is brought to you by sudburyweather.ca. Lands on our Sudbury.news website, where we will be taking the headlines from today. It's currently 4 degrees Celsius and light rain. So it's very, very damp and very cool out there. And today we can expect showers. The wind will be kind of moderate at 30 kilometers an hour. And high of only 8 degrees Celsius today. The UV index obviously is low. It's at 1. And tonight, cloudy with a 60% chance of showers and low of 3. So again, pretty similar to last night for tonight, overnight. A lot of us are firing up our furnaces. We go right from air conditioning to furnaces. You know, one week it's air conditioning, the other week it's a furnace for heat. Welcome to this area of the world. And if you're not from around here, that's what we have here. We could go from 50 degrees Celsius plus 50 with the Humidex to minus 50 degrees. So it's positive. Now those are extremes. Like you might get, plus 40 to minus 40 would be probably, happen more often than not. But those would be the extreme poles that we get here in terms of temperature. It's pretty crazy. Well, tomorrow we can expect a mix of sun and cloud with a 40% chance of showers. High of 11, UV index 3. And here's a look at your 6th day again, Wednesday. Chance of showers, high of 11, 40% chance of showers, that is. Mix of sun and cloud, 10 on Thursday. Showers, 30% chance of showers on Friday with a 13-degree high. 12 degrees is your high on Saturday with a mix of sun and cloud. Sunday, 30% chance of showers, 11 degrees. And Monday next week would be 10 degrees and a mix of sun and cloud. But just have a look at this. I know you're on the radio, you won't be able to, or if you're listening online, you won't be able to see this. However, the look over northern Ontario here, it almost looks like a hurricane the way the cloud formation is. But a lot of activity going on right now, as you can see in the green parts. That's signifying some precipitation of some kind. And so there's lots going on, but hopefully, as you can see in the far west, we have some clearing coming by next week or so. So that's your Sudbury Weather, brought to you by sudburyweather.ca. We'll be back with a little bit of a Wolves update for you, and news headlines, and our deep dive into what is our climate doing and why is it doing it, right after this. Okay, and your Sudbury Sports is brought to you by sudburysports.com. For all things Sudbury Sports, visit sudburysports.com. It is Randy Pascal, who is that Sudbury Sports guy. That's his website, and he does a great job informing us of all things Sudbury Sports, all the way from the Wolves to, all of the, community sports of all kinds. So shout out for Randy and his website, sudburysports.com. Okay, the Wolves were in action this weekend. They went to Peterborough. They beat them, shut them out 4-0 on Friday. Then they were in Kingston on Saturday. They so this was last week. So this was the 6th, the 7th, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. 4-0 against Peterborough. Then the following day, They beat the Kingston Frontenacs 5-2 and then went to Ottawa and lost. So that was Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sorry. So Thursday, Peterborough, Friday, Kingston, Saturday, Ottawa. Unfortunately, well, they won 2 out of the 3. They lost against Ottawa 5-2. And coming up in play, they're going to be home for the next little while. So you got on the 13th, that should be this Friday, the 13th. Yes, October. Can you imagine that? We have Friday the 13th in October. So for all you people who love Halloween and love that kind of stuff, Friday the 13th this October. And the Wolves will be in action in town against Owen Sound. So get out and support the Sudbury Wolves. Get your season membership as well, because they're not very expensive. You'll be able to get all the home games, and it's right at the beginning of the season. This is the time you want to be thinking of something like that. Then they're 2 days later, so Friday and then Sunday for a 2:05 start. They're going to have a rematch against Ottawa. So make sure, again, get your tickets, and then they're staying home for the next game as well, I think, on the Wednesday against Flint. It looks like. So the Wednesday against Mississauga, and then Friday against Flint. So they're at home for the next 4 games anyway. So get out, support your Sudbury Wolves. That's your Sudbury Sports, brought to you by SudburySports.com. We'll be back with news headlines, your comments, and a little bit of a deep dive into what is going on with our climate right after this. Okay, so welcome back. Sudbury News Talk right here on CKLU 96.7 FM, 7:30 to 8:30 each and every weekday morning. We weren't on yesterday because it was a holiday. It was Thanksgiving Monday, and I hope that everybody had a great Thanksgiving out there and was able to enjoy the weekend regardless of whether you were with many, many people or a few people or not with anyone, that you still had a good weekend this weekend. So with that, good morning, Judy. Thanks for being the first to the party this morning. Again, welcome. And Belinda, good morning. In order to fly, give up everything that weighs you down. That is so true. So true. I shared a meme on my personal Facebook page. I think it was 2 days ago. Anyways, it was a picture of a wagon with a large head on it. And then you look at the person who's carrying it. It was the person's head. So their head was so big they had to carry it on a wagon. And it said basically all of the fears and things that we have exist in our heads. They're not even real, right? So if we're carrying that around with us, you can imagine things are a lot lighter when we don't have to carry our burdens around with us all the time. I'm not saying we shouldn't manage our resources the best we can, but I think climate change is nothing but a cash grab. Maybe a little bit more. I just added that in myself. United States doesn't have a carbon tax, but Canada sure has high ones. And anything that Justin Trudeau pushes more than likely has a criminal element. That is Belinda. So that's her, obviously, statement there. Very scathing on Justin Trudeau, obviously, which I'm sure many, many people share that point of view, especially lately. Mona, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Hope you had a great weekend. Edward, thanks for being with us. Says the U.S. has climate change initiatives. The cost taxpayer money as well, for sure. So, yeah, we'll have some more on that today. I know it's going to be it's already I don't know, what do you call it? It's a polarizing subject. And the idea is to at least continue the conversation, I would hope. Because science doesn't speak with one voice. It never has, and it never will, and it never should. Really? Because science questions everything. And you should have, there's so much climate is not a slam dunk thing. It is very, very complicated. It's more complicated than we realize, right? And so that hopefully this week we'll be able to unpack that idea and at least learn something, even if it's something small, that will help us to be more enriched on the subject. Miles says Thursday. Yes, Friday, Kingston, for sure. I think I caught myself on that one. Thanks, Miles. Appreciated. Good morning. Take care. Stay safe. That's David. Good morning, David. And Kevin Frost. Good morning, Kevin. Thanks for being on. Much appreciated. I know you had a good Thanksgiving, for sure, as did I. Brian Poulain, good morning. Nickel City Campers, thanks for being on. All right. So today, Belinda says, all you had to do to see climate manipulation was look up the skies over the Sudbury area. The chemtrails look like tic-tac-toe on a board. These are not normal cloud formations, for sure. Very familiar with those as well. And that's another whole subject there. Maybe we'll include a little bit of that on the show this week as we talk about our climate. Good morning, Mike Perrault. Thanks for being with us this morning, along with Lorna. My goodness, a lot of these people I know coming on. Thanks for being with us. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving as well, Lorna. So it's going to be a great show today, so stick around. I promise it won't disappoint. So first of all, though, let's get to some headlines from Sudbury.news, which is our local news aggregator. Now that Facebook and Google and YouTube are kind of not sharing local news or any news for that matter anymore, it's becoming more and more important to be able to get our news. And so this is a good tool to use where all the news from all the Sudbury.com, CTV Northern Ontario, CBC Sudbury, and Sudbury Star all aggregate in one place. So you can just go to Sudbury.news and you get their stories. You click on it, goes right to their website. That way they can be monetarily rewarded for you reading their story. So we are doing that as a service to them as well. Miles says, climate change is biblical as well as revelations say in our times, Mother Earth will groan and sway to and fro. Okay, so yes, I believe there are references to that as well there, and I'm very familiar with those as well. Victoria, good morning, happy Monday with a smiley sunshine emoji. So a lot of people that I haven't seen too regularly or haven't seen on the show before are with us. So thanks for chiming in and commenting. Again, this is your show, so feel free to comment. I may not be able to get the comments read as the show goes on because there'll be more coming in, but I'll do my best to get them up on the screen as especially a topic as controversial, let's say, as climate change is. We do expect that to happen, and that's the whole reason for it. Okay, so from CBC, we have our first story of the day. Happens to be a business that I'm very familiar with. The Ugly Barn Farm are talking about mushrooms. Does anyone like mushrooms out there? I know I love mushrooms. Brittany Rantala Sykes, the owner of the Ugly Barn Farm, along with her husband, they run the Ugly Barn Farm, and Mark Stay Warren. And CBC, they were on CBC this morning, if anyone was listening, talking to Morning North, unearthed the culinary magic of mushrooms this harvest season. Several fall and winter mushroom varieties are ready for picking in the wild. So want to add something special to your harvest meal this season? Brittany Rantala Sykes, owner of Ugly Barn Farm, Mark Stay Warren, suggests to try some wild mushrooms. Mushrooms are having a bit of a renaissance in the culinary world, and Statistics Canada reports that the Great White North is the world's 8th largest mushroom producer in the world. Did you know that? Contributing over 151,000, almost 152,000 short tons of mushrooms in 2021, up 3.9% from the year earlier. And so it's growing. No pun intended. Our mushroom industry. Okay, so that's estimated to be enough mushrooms to make 1.2 billion dressed pizzas, StatsCan says. There's all kinds: shiitake, oyster, enoki, lion's mane. And people are discovering that the world of mushrooms is interesting and delicious, and that is true, especially for me. I know a type of mushroom, a morel. Morel? We used to pick them on Manitoulin Island when I was visiting my grandparents as a youngster. And so every mushroom has its own distinctness to it. And morels definitely had their own. And wow, it's just, such good memories of eating those at my grandparents'. So dishes like mushroom bruschetta and mushroom risotto are becoming more popular as more local farmers bring their unique organic goods to a wider audience. So, and this is a perfect time of year to try a new flavor. One of the main things you'll notice at this time of year is the oyster mushrooms and some of the other species actually change a lot. Rantala Sykes said they're growing slower and at a colder temperature. So their colors will be a lot darker and they might be a little bit denser. Now that's the thing, right? You have to be careful eating mushrooms, especially wild ones. You don't want to eat the wrong one because there are poisonous mushrooms out there as well. And it might be good for you if you want to go out and start, harvesting mushrooms in the wild to get educated on it, and you would get a book. Don't just buy any old book. I heard there's a lot of AI written books on Amazon these days that don't have 100% complete, factual information in it. And you definitely don't want to take a chance on buying an AI written mushroom book and then go out and harvest mushrooms. So just a bit of a tip there. Another thing that happens in the fall is the appearance of wild mushrooms. If you go out for a hike this time of year, you'll probably see some people coming out of the forest carrying buckets of mushrooms. So Rantala Sykes says the farm her husband Ivan and her run also helps. They prefer to let nature take its course with the mushrooms. No artificial climate control at the Ugly Barn. The Ugly Barn also runs foraging tours to help people recognize and pick wild mushrooms. There you go. So not only can you get your own book, you can go and learn from people who know. They'll take you on a tour, educate you, and people shouldn't be afraid to learn about new species, she said. So for more information, all you got to do is you go on Google and you type in Ugly Barn Farm, and you contact them if you're interested in one of those tours, learning more about mushrooms that are around us and how you can maybe save at the grocery store by going out and harvesting your own mushrooms, right? A couple other stories here on our aggregator from Sudbury.news. Artwork by alumni donated to Sudbury Secondary. So Orest Sawchuk painting depicts the iconic Nickel Range Hotel and more. So if you want to know more about that, that's a story from the Sudbury Star. The previous story was from CBC. Kiwanis Fest marks the 75th anniversary with a gala concert. More than 200 musicians, singers will perform on October the 21st. Again, that's a story from Sudbury Star. If you want to check out more about that, just click on that story and you'll get all the details there. Low-level drug dealer gets house arrest. Sudbury man was trafficking to support his own habit, prosecutor says. Again, that's from the stories from our courthouse, Sudbury Star, along with a woman fined for careless driving in the skied crash. Blood alcohol content was 4 times the legal limit. And I believe we talked a little bit about that on last show, that there was a lady from that area who, maybe this is unrelated to that story, but she was caught, I think 3 times or something, drinking and driving, and she was told if she gets caught again, there would be a tough penalty. And I thought, wow, isn't that a little bit lenient? But anyways, that's our legal system. needs to be kind of tweaked a bit, I think. Funds raised for a family who lost teen in the ATV crash recently. Chris Rock of Wanapate First Nation was a ray of sunshine as family and friends raised funds on his behalf. Again, condolences to the family. That story is on SudburyStar.com. A glorious, important project. The Sultans of String, Indigenous artists, take landmark collaboration on the road. So if you want to read more about that, SudburyStar.com. Also, Sudbury author serves up another slice of hockey history. Mike Comito's latest book, Leafs 365, to be released October the 17th. So this is not his first book, and he's definitely knowledgeable about hockey. There's no doubt about it. Works for Cambrian College in the day, and is a writer, freelance writer for hockey news. I think he covers the LA Kings quite significantly, but has now written a book on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Many people go for Toronto Maple Leafs around here. It's kind of divided between mainly Toronto and Montreal. Nothing's kind of changed. There's a few fans of other teams. I know a few friends, Philadelphia Flyers, Boston Bruins. There's some other fans of other teams, but it's a pretty staunch Leafs and Canadians area, I've found. A couple morning shout outs again. Marianne, good morning. Everyone from Barrie, thanks for joining us, Marianne. From Barrie, it's very cold and wet up here. Tracy, good morning. Stay safe. Much love to all. Heart emoji. Thank you so much. Okay. And Edward was saying about the drinking and driving charges was 4 times in 18 months, which, that's pretty incredible. So thanks for the clarification on that. Much appreciated. Sudbury Baby Expo to be held on October the 15th. Again, you just click on that story. There's going to be 85 exhibitors to be on hand, along with experts. So along with Sudbury Star has the newest arrivals, goes along with the Baby Experts, or the Baby Expo, sorry, where they list all the new arrivals that come into our city. And Warren woman earns international title. A woman from Marks Day Warren has a new title to show off, the world's strongest adaptive woman, after a recent competition in Florida. The world's strongest adaptive woman. So that's from CTV, Northern Ontario. And then a story we've been covering already here, Collage Boreal receives $1 million to look at ways to grow food in Canada's most harshest climates. That's kind of around here. Collage Boreal is teaming up with several groups to work on a project about growing food year-round in the region, and has just received a big boost from one of Canada's most prominent families. That's the Weston family, I believe. Okay, so now there's some of our headlines. For more local news, just head to Sudbury.news, and right on the homepage, you'll see all the news aggregated into one convenient location for everyone. Yeah, I guess there's some Senators fans here, 2 miles. Yes, there are some Senators fans. Maybe that would even be the third largest fan group here, possibly, if we were to take a poll. Yeah, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa. And Marianne says it's also cold and very wet in Barrie as well. Okay, so speaking of weather now, good segue, Marianne. And then Claire, good morning. Thanks for being with us. We're going to be talking about weather today. And there's been a lot of talk about weather. Whether or not you want to talk about the weather, it's a big topic about the climate. Why is it changing? Now, I know I've always, a lot of people have a hard time, if you're introverted, talking to people, right? Like talking to strangers, let's say. But I was always, as a coach, life coach or a business coach, helping people to be a little bit more extroverted, because that's only going to help promote your business. Let's say as someone who's self-employed, So you got to start conversations with people off the cuff. So one way, it's a sure way that you can never go wrong, is you just start talking about the weather, especially from here. If you're from around here, you just start saying, wow, what about the weather? Even if you just said that, what do you think of the weather lately? There's always something that can be talked about. And it's just true. If you ever just want to spark up a conversation, just say, wow, what do you think of the weather these days? Even if you're not even all that interested in weather, at least it'll get a conversation started. But the weather has been controversial in the news. A lot of us, the climate we notice changes. I don't know if it's never not changed. It's always seemed to change. If you look back tens of thousands of years, a fact is the climate has been changing all the time. Now, in recent years, however, a lot of people are interested in how much our doings contribute to the recent change that we've seen compared to the tens of thousands of years of change that's been going on. So do we impact, does our everyday life and involving, using fossil fuels or raising food the way we do with, the amount of livestock we've been told that contribute to climate change, the amount of CO2 released into the atmosphere is warming the planet. But we don't know is if we have something to do with the current warming of the planet. We don't know that. A lot of people will come out and say it's a for sure thing. It's been proven. We still don't know if we're making an impact. We don't know that for sure. I think we are. Again, but I just want to put out there, we don't know for sure. There's no 100% proof of it. Okay? I think we are. But to what extent, how much are we contributing to the fact that naturally, and now this is known, naturally the planet is warming on its own without us, right? We just came out of an ice age around 10,000 years ago, right? The reason why we still have ice and stuff in the north is that it's been retreating. It's been retreating before we were doing anything carbon related in terms of burning fossil fuels or anything, even because humans were on the earth. We weren't doing anything to cause, as we know, the temperature warming up. It's been warming naturally, right? But how much are we increasing it, if any? We don't know these answers. However, we are going out and doing drastic things as if we knew for sure we were. As if we already knew we were. We're making drastic changes in policies around the world that are going to affect. Like, we don't know if we are affecting the climate, and we don't know how much we are. But we're going to do things that are going to impact people and could impact people in a devastating way. Far more devastating than if we were just in a warmer planet. So that is a truth. And we're going to maybe look a little bit more into that this week. And hopefully we have enough insight from enough people that will shed some light on that. Right? Some solar light. How about that? They're going to shed some light that came from solar on the subject. So that way we're not increasing any more of our carbon footprint. So with that, there's a podcast that they dedicate their whole podcast to this very subject. And the fact that they believe there's so much more evidence that kind of flies in the face of the mainstream narrative that man is the worst thing that's ever happened to the planet. And we basically have to totally, almost stop existing in order to save the planet, to go to that extreme, basically. So they're coming out saying, wait a minute here. What about this? What about that? What about this? So I think it's good to kind of hear that other perspective. That's their whole podcast, right? Let's listen in on this. This was last week's. I think they've done one since then. So anyways, it's their podcast from last week. But anyways, it's still timely and it still has some good information in it. No, this is the one that's coming later. Okay, I'm not sure what just happened there. So we'll just go back, and here we go. So this is the one that I meant to play. We'll have to do that, and then we'll do this, and then here you go.
We are going to be doing number 80 in a series of Climate Change Roundtable. Today, it's the climate empire versus the rebellion. And of course, any of you who are climate skeptics, you're part of the rebellion, but you already know this. With us today, we have our usual guest, plus a special guest. We have with us Dr. Willie Soon, who's going to be the topic of the show today, and his paper, recent paper. Also, we have regulars, Linnea and Sterling Burnett, who are going to be providing expert commentary on some of the crazy climate news of the week, plus what Dr. Soon is talking about. But we're going to get to the crazy climate news of the week first. The first piece of crazy climate news is climate change is coming for America's property market. Yes, indeed. It's coming right down out of the skies and jumping right into the insurance industry because, you know, everyone in the other side thinks that weather is now climate. That's right. Any weather event is now climate, according to them. And that's why we have to insure against climate. Of course, you know, if you actually are a thinking person, you know that the difference between weather and climate is about 30 years. Weather happens on the short term. Climate happens on the long term. There are no climate catastrophes. There are no climate events. But the media and other entities use this as a tool to market their alarm. So comments, anybody?
Well, look, you can tell climate is nothing more than the aggregate of weather over a specified period of time for a region. Generally, it's 30 years. And so you can say things like various extreme weather events, pick your one, are increasing or decreasing over time. And you could say that is due to shifting climate. You can't point to a particular event. But the problem for insurers is they want to basically say everything's act of God and we're not responsible for paying off. They want government to bail them out for paying off for weather events. And so they want to blame climate change. We're not responsible for climate change, so why should we pay for that? That's act of God. That's act of man. So the problem for them is they can't show that extreme weather events are getting worse. Hurricanes aren't trending upward. Tornadoes aren't trending upward. Droughts not trending upward. Any of these things that they might have to pay out for, they're not worsening. So you can't let them off the hook by claiming climate change is causing these things.
Yep, I agree on that 100%. But, you know, it doesn't stop them. It doesn't matter to them whether they are following science or correctness or not. It only matters to them to push the agenda, it seems.
Well, especially on the journalism side, you know, you might be able to corner a climate scientist and get him to admit to a lot of this stuff, but the journalists have no reason to admit to any of it. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems here. And I think even people on the side of the debate that say that climate change is mostly caused by human beings and that, you know, that we have a major crisis looming, I think they should probably police their journalists a little bit more themselves, because it's not making them look good to have these guys run around saying every individual weather event is being caused or increased in intensity by climate change or by human emissions. You know, it's too easy for people to come in and say, show us the proof, and they can't. And then people will take what the journalists say and apply it to climate scientists. And while some of them are saying the same stuff, not all of them are. So I just wanted to add that, is that, you know, it's more of a, this is the state of science journalism that we fight every day on climaterealism.com. Good.
Well, but the insurers, I'm sorry, Willie, go ahead. Then
I thought I'd add something to chime in. Since I've been working on the question of climate on and off, actually nonstop for over 33 years or so. So I'm qualified. What I have to say is climate worthy in that sense. So I really think that, yes, the confusion of weather and climate is huge. It's indeed a fundamental problem in the climate science era, if you still want to talk about science. Most of these activists, people who has a label of a scientist under their name, are probably just not much of a scientist in a sense, because they just want to propagate the narrative. So when you go against a narrative, for example, when when Sterling mentioned about the extreme weather, there was a very significant news. I think most of the audience of this podcast would have known. The paper published in European Journal of Physics by Alimonti, 5 of these Italian scientists, physicists, by the way, got poor. They really got poor a week or two ago. And that's really tragedy. There's no reason for it to happen. And they just simply don't like it because those guys reached the conclusion that when they look at the data themselves, without listening to anyone, including the media, and they couldn't reach the conclusion that even the statistics has been changing. So, I mean, this is really another one of those. And why I mentioned that is because it partly had to also link to, the subject of the paper that we just published last week and things like that.
Yeah, we talked about that paper last week or the week before, and I've written about it. But I want to follow up because here I don't think we're talking as much about science. These are insurers; they're in it for profit, and they're trying to reduce their cost and make you pay more.
Yeah,
they don't. They're only gonna cite science that supports their bottom line. It's not about the truth for these guys. Yes. And the problem is, I mean, because if you look at the truth, the cause is more people moving to areas and cities expanding in areas that's called the bullseye effect, where natural disasters are already common. And B, they're erecting more and more expensive property and infrastructure there. So it costs more when disaster does strike. But if you look at disaster cost as a percentage of GDP, that's actually trending down. So the insurers don't have a leg to stand on scientifically or even economically. They're just trying to pad their bottom line.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to our next crazy climate story. This one here has to do with beer. Beer could run low as climate crisis decimates Europe's barley crops, warns the CEO of Japanese brewer Asahi. Well, once again, it's weather, not climate. Weather happens in the space of a season. It doesn't happen because of climate. Climate, if we were to, let's say at the Heartland Institute, say, because it was cold in Europe all through October, that is completely disproving climate change. The left would go apocalyptic because they would say, well, weather is not climate. Yet here they are in the media saying that because there's been one bad harvest, climate crisis is decimating it. It's the same old stuff, right?
It is, and it doesn't hold water. I mean, so we all know it. Look, farming's tough. But it's always been tough.
Right.
Now, but it's always yearly and seasonally. You can even have a good decade, but you can also have a down decade, depending on, as Anthony points out, the weather. But is beer? Look, I used to love beer before I turned diabetic and was told I couldn't drink it. I was a big microbrew aficionado. So I saw this story and I thought, really? Let's talk about some of the things that go into beer. Hops, the main ingredient, hops. Well, it set records for production in 2021, and the previous record for production was in 2019. So,
oh no, climate change is causing hops to grow.
Yeah, so hops isn't suffering. Hops set records for production 5 of the last 7 years. Okay, well, barley production is up. Maybe not in Japan, but barley production worldwide's up. Wheat production, because wheat beer is another beer. Wheat production's up. Rice is an adjunct in some beers. Rice production is up. Any crop you pick during the period of so-called dangerous climate change, the production and the yields for all of these is increasing. So you can't, with a straight face, claim climate change is killing beer, or for that matter, almost any other food.
Right. The only thing I could think of, some kind of a brewed product that be linked to climate, would be whiskey if it's aged 30 years, right?
Hey, now, because I can't drink beer, if you come after whiskey, now I'm going to take climate change seriously.
All right. Way to go. Cool. All right, let's go to our next crazy climate news of the week. Ravaged by floods and fires, Greece is on the front lines of climate reality. Well, again, it's weather, not climate, folks. You know, they jump right to it. Any abnormal event, any unexpected event, any event that might set a record, it's climate change. The media automatically uses this as their go-to methodology to scare people about climate change, when in fact it's just weather. I mean, look at all the years that Greece did not burn, you know, or floods did not happen. Was that caused by climate change too?
Yeah, so there you have it. They basically make the case, at least, that we need to be looking at what is weather, like what's just weather that happens all the time, and what is climate. Climate is the over a long period of time, looking back as well as forward. So, right, you have to take all of the data, and climate is over a long period of time. Weather is what happens each and every day, and it always has been happening. And so, just to take a breath and just think for a little while about what they're saying, right? And I know it could be hard because you're probably just used to hearing one side of the story, and that the story is already, the debate is done. There's no need to even have a debate anymore. It's been settled. Science speaks with one voice. It's all known, right? But it's not, and that's the thing. It's not known. That's a fact. Right? So now we're going out and doing things based on very poor information that we have. We're now going to make decisions on this. And what are the decisions we're doing? What are they going to look like for people? You know, people live on the planet. I mean, do we just want to wipe ourselves out so that way the planet can go on for the animals? You know, that's really net zero. Like, you are mainly made of carbon. That's what you are. You breathe out carbon. You are carbon. You're walking carbon. And when they say net zero, meaning zero carbon emissions, you're part of that, right? So anyways, another perspective here of some of the things they've been doing in Europe already. They've really wanted to kind of set a precedence, the WEF, and so Europe has listened, and how has that gone so far? And we'll be back right after that.
We are living in one of those moments where so much is happening all at once, and information about it all is so tightly controlled that huge history-changing events can occur, and in fact are occurring right now, and nobody seems aware of them. It's pretty unsettling, actually. Here's one example. Europe is descending into poverty. Did you know that? Had someone told you that? So the most advanced continent on the planet, the birthplace of Western civilization, our civilization, is getting much poorer very quickly. It's moving backward at high speed. Just a year ago, Europe was a modern place. For example, the overwhelming majority of Europeans heated their homes with natural gas, as modern people do. In Germany, the continent's richest country, only about 6% of households, most of them rural, heated with cordwood. And you'd expect that, given that, again, Germany is a modern industrialized country with central heating and indoor plumbing and all the other trappings of a society that has moved beyond the medieval period. Last year, only about 6% of Germans used wood to heat their homes, but that has changed dramatically. Demand for firewood in Germany has risen so fast that there is none left to buy. You can't get it. So desperate Germans are now cutting their own wood, scouring the forests like their ancestors for sources of heat. So they call it biomass, but it's wood. They're burning wood, again, as they did during the feudal period. That's Germany. In Poland, families are standing in line for days to buy coal. Not in 1910, right now, tonight. Cars queued up outside coal mines, hoping for fuel. Quote, this is beyond imagination. The French government has announced energy rationing this winter. Just the other day, France had so much energy that it exported it to other countries. It was a net exporter of energy. Now, there won't be enough heat in France for everyone in the country to stay warm. In the UK, 70% of restaurants are preparing to close, to go under. Why? Because when winter comes, they won't be able to afford to keep the heat and lights on, et cetera, et cetera. This is happening across Europe in every country. So the question is, why is it happening? And the answer is extremely simple. There's an energy shortage in Europe. Cheap energy is essential. It is the key to everything that a normal society strives for: prosperity, safety, a longer life expectancy for its citizens. Everything depends on cheap energy, but Europe no longer has it. And as a result, things are falling apart very quickly. Energy costs in Europe are expected to increase by hundreds of % in coming months. Germany's year-ahead price of electricity, that's the benchmark for all of Europe, it's measured in euros per megawatt hour, that price just exceeded 1,000 euros for the first time in history. For perspective, just a week ago, last Monday, the cost was about 700 euros per megawatt hour, and that was a record. In other words, the price rise is approaching 50% in a single week. In France, electricity went up 25% in one day. That was last Friday. Imagine that happening to you. Here's what Europe looks like tonight. 7 times more expensive. So it turns out, if you don't have cheap natural gas, you can't run the continent. Now, if you've got a graduate degree and live in a city in the United States, you may be shocked to learn this. You may never have heard this before. You may have believed that fossil fuels were on their way out any day now. And you thought that because the Davos people and our own leaders assured us of that for decades. They told us that green energy was the future, and the future is here. It's here. As recently as last month, the World Economic Forum claimed that Europe could save, quote, 1 trillion in fossil fuel costs by switching to renewables. But it turns out, and this may not shock you, they had no clue what they were talking about. They knew nothing about the subject they talked about endlessly. Green energy cannot replace fossil fuels. Not now, not anytime soon. Fossil fuels remain what they have always been, the key to civilization. That is true now. That has been true since Homo erectus started the first cooking fire in a cave nearly 1 million years ago. So-called green energy is not close, is nowhere near replacing gas and oil and coal. It's measurable. We could have known this. Anyone with 8th grade math skills could have figured out in about 10 minutes that we cannot replace fossil fuels with renewables or green energy. And of course, they must have known that. When they told you otherwise, it was just posturing. It was childish and destructive fantasy talk that apparently fooled millions of their citizens and millions of ours. The Green New Deal means what it always meant. It means poverty. What's changed, what's so very interesting, is that suddenly everyone else who's been paying attention can see that they were lying. They are frauds, and the entire population of Europe now knows that. Donald Trump, to his credit, whatever you think of him, caught on to this early. 4 years ago, Trump warned Europe about its energy future during a speech at the United Nations. The German delegation laughed at him. Remember this? But they're not laughing anymore. The Europeans have discovered that the real threat to people is global cooling, otherwise known as winter. Far more people freeze to death every year than die of heat. In 2019, for example, 4 times as many people died of cold as of heat. That's according to the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. So when temperatures in Europe begin to drop a few months from now, this is a huge problem, and that will be obvious to everyone. It's not global warming, it's global cooling. That's what's going to kill your grandmother. And when everyone understands that perfectly well, a lot of things are going to happen. The status quo will crumble. Factories will close. Unemployment will rise. Disposable income will disappear. And you're seeing signs of that already. Personal savings rates are down dramatically. In this country, 60% of Americans can't cover an expected $400 expense. Credit card debt increasing year over year by 13%. That's the biggest jump in 20 years. Total household debt set an all-time record of $15.8 trillion. That's in this country. It's also true similarly in Europe. So how will spiraling energy costs affect all of this? And what will be the cascading effect? Well, when the cost of keeping your apartment warm jumps by hundreds of % in a single year, you become a completely different person. You change your behavior radically. You're no longer tempted to buy a new $1,400 iPhone, or shop at Whole Foods, or even pick up an extra cappuccino. The entire consumer economy grinds to a halt because there's no discretionary income. So it is impossible to overstate the downstream effects on the world of an energy crisis. Everything changes. How are the central banks responding to this? Not well. They seem to be making things worse on purpose. You know, in the United States, we're told not to notice what the Fed does because the Fed is now diverse and therefore great. The same central banks that intentionally caused inflation, and they did, those same central banks are now hiking rates to destroy demand. The problem is, this isn't a demand problem. This is a supply problem.
The CIA is a totally illegitimate criminal organization unless
we are living.
That's odd. Now, although that statement was very true, that statement was not supposed to be part of that segment. Anyways, at the end. So there you see it a little bit. It unfolds a little bit. What are the costs of going down the road of doing something about something that isn't even proven yet? We don't have all of our ducks in a row, but yet we're making drastic measures to combat it. So anyways, that's today's show. I just thought I would put that out there and see what you think. And yeah, there's always a different way of looking at something. And the more ways you look at it, the better perspective you can have for your own opinion or where you're coming from. We all have opinions, right? We've seen them come up on the screen. And so I just want to make sure that everybody is able to at least continue the conversation, be part of the conversation, and be enriched by other points of view. That's your show for the day. Appreciate you being on. We'll be back, God willing. We may not be here tomorrow because I have an issue with one of my things that I use on the show here that I've been trying to resolve this morning. But God willing, we'll be back. Same time, same place, and the same time, 7:30, CKLU 96.7 FM, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU. Have a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday, everyone. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to see you tomorrow. Ciao, everyone.